Would you consider yourself to be a freelancer? Or maybe you prefer to be called a solopreneur or perhaps a sole practitioner? Whatever you choose to call yourself, running a business of one can at times be hard and lonely. So how can you avoid the common pitfalls and thrive as a freelancer? I'm joined by Ange Lyons for a conversation about freelancing over the next 2 episodes of Architecture Business Club, the weekly podcast for small firm founders who want to build their dream business in architecture and enjoy more freedom, flexibility and fulfillment in what they do. I'm John Clayton, your host. I know that building an architecture business can feel hard, especially for a sole practitioner. The good news is that you don't have to do it alone. In 2024, we launched our membership community to a small group of founding members, including architects, architectural technologists and interior designers. We meet online each week and occasionally in person to support each other in building our businesses and to have some fun along the way. In 2025, we are opening the doors to a limited number of new members. If you'd like to join this supportive group of like-minded professionals, now's your chance. Just go to architecturebusinessclub.com/waitlist or click the link in the show notes and enter your details so we can let you know when and how you can join this incredible group. And if you have any questions, just email John, that's Jon, at architecturebusinessclub.com. Now let's start our conversation on freelancing. Ange Lyons is a brand and marketing graphic designer based in London. With over 20 years of experience in the design industry, she has successfully run her business, Lyons Creative, for the past 12 years. Ange specialises in creating marketing designs, brands, magazines and websites, working across both print and digital media. Ange is passionate about engaging with people and offering her assistance wherever possible. Her love for colours and fonts is evident in her work, and she delights in sharing this enthusiasm with others. To connect with Ange, head over to LinkedIn, send her a connection request and a DM to let her know that you've listened to the show. Ange, welcome to Architecture Business Club.
Hi John. Nice to be here. Thank you for having me on. I feel really honoured. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. Yeah, it's great to have you here. So, Ange, I know that in your free time, you're a big cycling fan. Can you tell me about that? And there's a group that you're in as well, isn't there? A cycling club.
Yeah, there is. So during lockdown, a group was created by 3 women, 3 black women, and they called it Black Women on Wheels, Be Well. And they just literally met up in a park and they started the group. And I heard about them about a year and a bit into lockdown, after lockdown. And I cycle them every other Saturday where we can and weather permitting because we are in the UK. And I've made the most amazing friendships there. And it's just been great. I love cycling. Plus we get to exercise, make good friends and have a laugh. We're not a serious cycling club. We do have a kit, actually. I designed the kits for them. But we're not like, we're not going to be all crazy and just go hundreds and hundreds of miles. Sometimes we can do. Some people break off and they can do that, but we just more so go for the community, the cycling and the chat. Basically, it's just it's one of those clubs that are it's serious, but not taking ourselves too serious. And I love being with them. And, but they're called Be Well for short. And they're called
Be Well.
Be Well, as in BWOW. So Black Women on Wheels.
Be Well, yeah. I love it. Yeah. It's a great name as well.
So I also handle their social media account for them. So I do a bit of pro bono work in my time. So I've just designed their website and I've designed their kit. So I'm really part of the community there. So I love
I'm going to say, it sounds like they're very, very lucky to have you as part of the group.
Yeah, I think so. And also the part of the group is... that's another thing. Everyone is so different and so diverse that everyone, if they can, volunteers their time somewhere down the line. So, we're part of a community there.
That sounds lovely. How many members do you have at the moment?
Oh, gosh, do you know what? I actually don't know. There's a big WhatsApp group. We're on WhatsApp, or we chat on WhatsApp. I haven't counted the numbers recently, to be honest with you, but it's quite a decent amount of people there.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I haven't been cycling for ages, actually. So yeah, but I think I need to upgrade my bike. I used to have one of those Brompton folding bikes.
Oh yeah.
But then since I sort of wasn't commuting anymore, it seemed like a bit of a luxury item. So I ended up letting somebody else have that and ended up selling it. Although I do miss it because it was a lovely bike.
They're so convenient, especially like in London, jumping on the train with them, just like flipping them over and flipping them down to get on the train or bus or wherever you need to go.
Yeah, if I was still commuting like that, I would absolutely still have it. It was like the best bike that I ever owned. It was such a cool bike, but never mind.
Yeah, no worries.
So we're going to talk about freelancing. People might use some other terminology. Maybe they might call themselves a solopreneur or a business of one, perhaps.
Business of one, solopreneur.
Yeah. So we're gonna have a chat about that. I think for any architects or people that have been working in architecture that might be transitioning into freelancing, maybe they might have been working for another business or another architecture practice. I mean, finding clients at the beginning can be quite a challenge. I was wondering if you had some recommendations for how freelancers can market themselves. Do you have any thoughts on that?
It's interesting because when you make that decision to go into freelancing, the first thing I'd say is try and get at least one behind you before you leave the full-time job, and also build on your connections, people that you know. So marketing yourself, I'd say, you know what I'm going to say? I'm going to say jump onto LinkedIn. Marketing yourself, and LinkedIn is one of those platforms where it's free. You don't pay. There is a premium service, but you can sell yourself on LinkedIn. Not easily, because it will involve work, but if you start posting content on LinkedIn or you start commenting on people's comments and just start getting your face visible, start getting recognized, I'd say that is the number one place to start, just to start. And then marketing yourself by building your website or getting your website built for you. And then another form of marketing is networking. You can't beat people. People talk to people. People love people. And when you start networking, either online or in person, you'll start seeing your connections grow, and then people start recognizing you. So it's about, I suppose marketing is about getting your face out there. But as a freelancer, solopreneur, whatever you want to call yourself. I call myself a freelancer with a business. Start marketing yourself in the most simplest way that's not too stressful for yourself. And I would say LinkedIn. I don't know if you saw this, John, but there's the statistic came out recently from LinkedIn that they now have 5 billion users, and only 5% of the users post.
What?
Yeah.
That's insane.
Can you imagine if you're on LinkedIn and you're not even posting? There are 5 billion people there. There's 1 billion people there.
What? So 1 billion people,
and
only 5% of them are posting.
Yeah.
Right. That sounds like a huge opportunity, because, you could easily become one of the 5. You could be part of that 5% just by starting to post and to stand out more.
Yeah. And even if you're not posting, I'd go and comment on people. So if there's someone that you might want to work with, or you might think, that person knows that person, or they've got an audience that I might want to go and have a look at or be engaged with, start connecting with people, start following people, comment on their posts if they post. And then I know people say it, but they go into DMs. And I know sometimes people direct messaging, and I know people sometimes find that quite icky and not very, nice. But we are in the business of getting work and marketing ourselves. So even if it's just like saying, I saw your post, that was really cool. They're like, oh, thanks. It's not like, don't go in direct and say, I've got this service. Rah! Don't do that. They will hate you or they'll block you.
Yeah, buy my thing. I get some terrible first messages from people where it's just straight into the pitch, literally as soon as we've accepted the connection, and it's like, right, here's my service that you should buy from me. And it's that's, you wouldn't do that. You shouldn't do that. If you were a networking event in person, you imagine how that would feel if you walked in there and somebody just came over and started immediately trying to sell you sell you their product or service. I think there is some similarities there with the approach, I think, between online platforms like LinkedIn and in-person networking, isn't there? That actually, it's about, a lot of it does hinge on relationship building and, getting to know people, and not just thrusting a business card into the hand and like, buy my thing.
Yeah. It's good to do a business card, but do that at the end of the conversation, maybe. So, or if they offer one up, and one thing I do actually, I've got laptop stickers.
Oh, laptop sticker.
Yeah, that say love on it, and it's got my email address and my website address and my name, because it's something different than a business card, isn't it?
Oh, that's quite cool.
Yeah.
So there's some really good ideas there, because those are ideas that, in order to for somebody that's new to freelancing, to be able to start marketing themselves and getting their name out there in a way that isn't necessarily like hugely time consuming or costly. You can get set up a LinkedIn account for free, and there are lots of networking events that people can go and attend, and there's lots of those that are free too, isn't there?
Yeah, there are. And also, don't forget, go local. If there's something local to you, have a look. A lot of councils nowadays have a local meetup, or they might have a local business hive or hub somewhere. Just go and, if I say, get your name out there, even if it's like a local group. Just go and check out what your actual area has locally, especially if we are by ourselves. We do work by ourselves, and if you feel like you're craving for company or networking for meeting people. I'm not saying going to like BNI type meetings or anything like that. And again, not spending money. These events that are put on by the council are normally free. So
that's such a good point, that, and I think that's worth reiterating, that going to those events, there's multiple benefits, because it isn't just about, oh, well, I'm just going there because it's a chance for me to try and win business and to sell my services or whatever. It is an opportunity that, particularly if you're working on your own and you perhaps work from home, that it can feel quite isolating. You can feel a little bit lonely. And I think you might not realise that to begin with, but once you're doing it for a little while, so having the opportunity to go to like local in-person events and meetings, it's serving so many different purposes. And the fact that you can go along, I think another objection that maybe some of the architects listening might have is, oh, well, what's the point in me going to, if I only work with this certain type of client, what's the point in me going to like a local thing? And it's like, yeah, but it's not just about that. It's not, no. It's all of like every person that you meet, it's like they know hundreds of people as well.
Yeah.
So it's like you're getting the opportunity to meet other people that they might not directly ever be a customer.
Yeah.
But they might be a business buddy. You might make a new friendship. It might be a business partnership, or somebody that like refers business to you over time.
I was just about to say that it could be even a recommendation. This is no word of lie. I went to a networking event in my area about 2 years ago, and I'm still part of the community. They Hive in Walthamstow, and they're great. And somebody there recommended me to a scientist who wanted her branding done, and she turned out to be a client. This is someone I met 2 years ago that's just remembered me. So do you know what I mean? It's just like, it's not you going there for work. I went there because it was a local event. I wanted to meet some people. Yeah, great. I got work off it. But 2 years later, So, and again, it's just like what you said. It's not just about getting the work. People know people, and they'll recommend you but don't go with a hard sell.
Yeah, absolutely. And if that doesn't entice you to go to your local networking event, there's usually some free pastries or something like that, some free goodies if you're lucky. Yeah. So, Ange, I'd be interested to know, we've talked there about a few ideas, and mainly looking at how we can use LinkedIn and networking being another thing that we can use to help market ourselves. What creative approaches have you seen used by freelancers? So maybe have you seen some ways to market their business that not everybody's doing, something a little bit different that beyond kind of social media and networking? Remember, don't forget to join the waitlist for our membership community, where you can meet other business owners who want the same thing as you. A thriving business that gives you more freedom, flexibility and fulfillment. Just go to architecturebusinessclub.com/waitlist or click the link in the show notes and enter your details so you don't miss out on this amazing opportunity to improve your business and your life. And if you're enjoying the show, then please leave a 5-star review or rating wherever you listen to podcasts. Now back to the show.
Yeah, only what I've seen on when people have actually posted on social media, that when they've actually onboarded a new client, or they're offboarding a new client, something creative around that, but they're telling us about it, is that they might send them something like a notebook or a cookie or homemade brownies that are, or something that's local to that person that they might have, like, in conversation said, oh, do you like this? And they might have heard that they liked it, and they'll send them a gift. And I'm not saying that you should spend all your money on client gifts, but just those nice little touches that the client will then share, maybe on their social media, their LinkedIn or Instagram, and say, oh, look, this person sent me this. And that's another form of creative marketing,
I love that, yeah. And that's something that, if you think about, let's say, an average client project, and this is going to vary from business to business, but I mean, you might be working on a project for that client, and maybe the value of that project could even be several £1,000s potentially if it's an architecture client. And to do something for them like that, to send them a thoughtful gift at some point in that process of working with them, and actually, if you think of it as a percentage of what the value of that client project is, it could be a relatively small percentage, but actually a really kind of impactful thing for the customer to get something, especially if it's something like a physical thing, like they're actually physically getting a gift that they can hold in their hands, whether that's, I don't know, like a nice box of brownies from the bakers that they mentioned that they really like, or a gift, I don't know, like I suppose it could even be like a voucher for somewhere if they'd mentioned that they had a favourite restaurant or something.
Yeah, it could be something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah, exactly. On my offboarding form, I do say to people, I do ask my client, do you want something sweet, savoury or paper-based? So when it's the paper-based one, I get them a personalised notebook. Oh,
I love that.
And again, when you say the value of what they've spent with you, and then they'll remember you, and then they'll again post it on, they might not even post it, but even getting that bit of testimonial from them, that's a bit of marketing for you. You can put that on your profile, on your LinkedIn, make a post out of it.
Yeah.
So creative marketing. I've also been at events when I've seen people give chocolate bars. There was an illustrator, and he had the Chocoloonie. Is it Chocotoni? The Tony's chocolate.
Oh,
that one.
yeah.
The Looney.
Tony Chocoloonie or something.
That's,
I know what
that's
you
the
mean.
one. You know what I mean. But he actually printed out his own labels and stuck them around a chocolate bar and put them in the goodie bags. I'm just like, that's genius. We get a chocolate bar, plus that's like creative marketing for you. That's marketing for you.
I love that. That's so cool. Something else that I saw, which I really liked, was an architect that they'd printed a book for their client. Well, when they go out to see prospective clients and they go to that initial meeting with them, rather than sort of just leaving them with a little bit of paperwork to read through and or a business card, they'd printed a really nice book. And it was like a mini book, and it was including some sort of case studies and client stories.
Nice.
But it felt like it was, I mean, I don't know who said it, but somebody said it. Books are like the world's best business card, because if you leave somebody with a book, they're very, very unlikely to just throw it away or put it in the recycling.
Was it Daniel Priestley by any chance?
It may well have been. Yes, it may well have. But yeah, it's so true though, because like we don't throw books away. So to have something like that to give to prospective client or somebody that was interested in working with you is quite a nice thing. I know that's sort of more at the front end, isn't it, rather than gifting them afterwards. But
but it's still
creative way.
Creative way, yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Cool. And I suppose things like we're on a podcast now, aren't we?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, how can I forget? I'm meant to be marketing myself here. I'm on a podcast. Yeah, you're right. And podcasting is a great way, if you can, get onto guesting on a podcast or creating your own. I'd say guesting is obviously a lot easier. And then with those, what I love about podcasting is that I get to talk to obviously the podcast hosts and explore ideas with them and talk to them about different subject matters. But then the best thing out of it is that you can create your own Spotify playlist. And a lot of people that have been on podcasts, they forget this. Like, you've been on podcasts, why don't you actually put them on a playlist in Spotify and say, I don't know, say from mine, Ange Lyons podcast appearances. And then I've got a list of podcast appearances. So if I put that on my website, or if someone sees it on my LinkedIn profile, they'll say, oh, I might go and have a listen to her, see what she's talking about. That is a bit of creative marketing right there. And it's free.
That is a fantastic idea, and that is something that I haven't done. So I need to go and do that. I need to go and put together a Spotify playlist of podcast appearances.
Yeah. And you share that link with people and say, especially if you're pitching to be on a podcast, that's a whole different ballgame, I suppose, is wanting to pitch to be on a podcast. I'd say always research the podcast first that you want to be on. Don't just say, I want to be on your if But if you put that as a link in your pitch deck to be on a podcast, they can see where you've been and how you sound like and how you come across. And again, it's marketing. How many billions of people are on Spotify?
Yeah, no, that's a really good idea. And I would say if anybody is thinking about, oh, that sounds interesting, maybe being a guest on a podcast, I recently did an episode with Colin Gray, and we talked all about how to be a great podcast guest, and we touched upon pitching for podcasts as well. So if anyone's listening thinking that sounds quite interesting and you haven't listened to that episode, please go and give that a listen. And the other thing I would say is I am always on the lookout for great guests for this show. So if anybody is listening to this thinks that, oh, I'm a little bit curious about being a guest on a podcast, if you've done it before, then feel free to reach out to me, connect with me on LinkedIn, or drop me an email and share your Spotify playlist if you've taken Ange's advice there. And I will happily give that a listen, and we can talk about being a guest on the show. And if you haven't done a podcast interview before, then go and listen to that episode with Colin, and then feel free to make your pitch and get in touch, especially if you're working in and around the world of architecture. That would be really cool, because I'd love to hear some more stories from people in the industry. It's a lot of shy people, I think, that I've spoken to a few folks that are curious about the idea of taking part in something like a podcast, but they're a bit like, oh, not too sure, and maybe feeling a bit shy about.
And also, I think people also think, why do I want to listen to me? What have I got to say? My gosh, people always want to hear stories. That's one thing I'd always say. People always want to hear about the person, hear a story, get some advice, get some tips. I listen to loads of podcasts. I get so many tips from them because as you said, we're in our rooms, in our offices, working from home, working at co-work. We're mostly pretty much by ourselves. Stick the stereo on, just put a podcast on, get some tips and listen in.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, I think everybody's got a story to share. There's a story in all of us that, definitely like to hear more of that. So, Ange, one other thing that can be quite tricky for freelancers is setting a charge out rate. So sort of deciding what to charge. And I think that's especially can be tricky in architecture because the projects can vary quite a bit in complexity. And I imagine there's some similarities there in other creative businesses and in your business, for example, that there might be some variation in the scope and size of projects that you might be working on. Have you got any thoughts on how we could approach that, about how we can approach deciding upon a charge out rate?
It's interesting because a lot of, especially in graphic design and freelancers, I've tried to stop doing this now. It's charged by the hour, and I just think that that's not the best way to do it because we've had years of experience, and you're not billing in that in that 1 hour time or your hour charge rate. I think around charging projects, always work out. Even though I say don't charge by the hour, work out how long it is going to take you, and then what I do is I add more on top. Because then we're going to have the variables of they're taking forever to get back to you, or they're not getting back to you, or we've had to build in another meeting into this. I know some freelancers that build in meeting time and then they'll charge that by the hour. I try not to do that because I like to be upfront and open with my clients to say this is going to cost X amount. So there are calculators out there that work out project rates. I think of one right now, but I have used them in the past where you put in how many hours you think it's going to take and then how much you want to charge for, and then build in anything else on top of that. Like, for example, are you going to have to, well, for me, for example, am I going to have to delve into buying stock photography for them? So I'm going to build in that price. Am I going to, do I have to talk to printers? I'm going to build in meeting time. So it's there's no set, it's quite hard. Pricing is so tricky. It's such a tricky thing. I don't know if that helps, but it's,
definitely.
It's such a tricky thing. But I'd definitely say one of the things I would say is that I'd research price calculators. have a look at price calculators, and then they always tell you to add a percentage on top, because there's going to be so many variables that will just like tip you over, and the client is going to take more of your time.
Yeah, I think that that thing over charging by the hour versus charging by the project, I'm sure that's something that a lot of small business owners wrestle with. And it's like the charging by the hour thing, I guess it depends a little bit on your appetite to risk as well. And particularly if you're sort of a new freelancer, when they're charging by the hour, it's like, well, I know if I charge by the hour, like I'm going to get paid this amount for that time that I spend on the project. And then when it moves to the project-based pricing, that like the key to that is that there has to be the number has to be big enough to actually cover, and that's where it kind of gets a little bit tricky. Where it's like that's project-based pricing. I would agree is the preferable way to go if the number that you're charging is high enough to actually allow for that margin of error and scope creep. That's the classic one, isn't it? That's another one,
scope creep. Yeah, exactly. A scope creep, I don't know. It's a term that people, when I mentioned it to somebody, they were like, what does that mean? I think sometimes people don't know what scope creep. Actually, do you want to explain, John?
Well, yeah. I mean, scope creep's sort of like when, you in all good faith, you will put together a proposal for a client and you'll agree that the scope of work that you're going to do for them, and you have in mind whether, and this in particular is when it's like project-based pricing and it's a fixed price, that you say, okay, this is going to be £5,000, we're going to do this work, and in your mind maybe you thought, well, roughly this is going to take X number of hours, but then somewhere along the way there's like some extra bits and pieces that seem to creep in, and it might be kind of almost quite sort of insidious, that it's sort of like you might not realise it's happening, and it's like, oh, can you just do this bit as well, or could we have an extra revision, or could we have that? And if the contract and agreement with the client in the first instance isn't like absolutely watertight, crystal clear with exactly what is included in terms of deliverables, like very easily there can be this scope creep that this creeps in, where all of a sudden the scope of the project has like slowly sort of expanded, and then by the end of it you look at it and you're like, wow, like I was meant to spend 100 hours on this and I spent like 140 hours on it, or there was these extra things that, because it wasn't bolted down at the beginning, and because maybe I felt a bit awkward asking the client for like, oh, well, actually that little extra thing you've asked for here is going to be chargeable. Maybe that conversation, because I think that's the thing, is that sometimes that conversation around pricing, that sometimes we can feel a bit icky about talking about money and pricing. And if that doesn't happen up front and it isn't sort of crystal clear about like, this is what's included in the package and anything beyond that is chargeable, this is what we charge. It can fall into a grey area. A classic one is within architecture that I found is, when does a revision, so we'd like say somebody wanted to make a small change to a design that's been done on a building, like we'd be designing somebody's home extension and the client would like to have some changes made. Can we change the bifold doors to sliding doors, or can we change that, make that roof light bigger, that sort of thing? So first it's like, has it been identified how many rounds of revisions are included? Can they just keep coming back forever and ever saying, no, move it 2 inches to the left. Oh, no, move it 2 inches to the right, So that's one area where there can be a lot of scope creep that creeps in with little revisions. And the other thing is, when does a project go from, when does a revision become a redesign? And has that been communicated with the client? So what happens if, like, we spend lots of time designing this project, or in the case of graphic design, it might be a branding or logo, and then they're like, no, we need to change everything. Like, and their expectation might be that, oh, well, the agreement says we get 3 revisions included. Well, we've only had 1 revision, so can you just like change the whole thing now as part of the next revision? It's like, oh, hang on a minute, this is actually a full redesign. Like now, you told us you wanted in the case of architecture, well, you said you wanted a single-story rear extension, and now you're saying you want a loft conversion. Well, that's totally different. So that's a redesign. That's total redesign oh, but that's a revision. Like, where does it say in the contract that, you said we could have as many changes as we want, and that's where it can get a bit sticky, I think. Have you had that sort of experience, Ange, in graphic design and branding? And that's all we have time for today. In the next episode, Ange and I continue our conversation about freelancing and talk more about contracts, getting paid, how sole practitioners can avoid isolation, productivity, and more. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Architecture Business Club. If you liked this episode, think other people might enjoy it, or just want to show your support for the show, then please leave a glowing 5-star review or rating wherever you listen to podcasts. It would mean so much to me and makes it easier for new listeners to discover the show. And if you haven't already done so, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you never miss another episode. If you want to connect with me, you can do that on most social media platforms. Just search for @Mr. Jon Clayton. The best place to connect with me online, though, is on LinkedIn. You can find a link to my profile in the show notes. Remember, running your architecture business doesn't have to be hard, and you don't need to do it alone. This is Architecture Business Club.